Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast with your host, Dr. Tony Huang. Today, I'm with a special guest, Lexi. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lexi Reese. I'm so happy to be here. I am the CEO and co-founder of Lanai, which we'll get to later, but is an AI navigation system for enterprises.
So, I got a question about how significant was the gap between the AI interests and implementation in the enterprise sector, considering like execs want to prioritize AI, but only say 90% of organizations remain observers.
Yeah, I'd say the gap, kind of Google search trends reflects this metaphorically and actually. I think in the US, leaders were talking a lot more about crypto as a strategic topic of interest until ChatGPT came on the scene, and then suddenly Gen AI became, and the moves in the enterprise world, and I have 30 years of operating experience, having been at American Express, Google, Gusto as the COO, and now at Lanai. But my point being, I've been in the seat of operator at large enterprises, so I relate to the journey many of our executives have gone on, which was the first move, block all Gen AI use at a company level. It was too scary, too unknown. Second move was form a council and a charter and educate people on how to use AI and what not to do. And the third move was selective enablement. So now let's add, we have a council, we have a charter, we have a process to selectively enable apps. And that's exactly where we are now, which is that is breaking because people may have selectively enabled some apps, but now Gen AI is proliferating every SaaS app they have. So how do people right now implement a that enables them to get the best of Gen AI, but protect against the worst? And that's what people are struggling with right now.
I know that at my work, they did block like ChatGPT from being able to be accessed through our internal computers because we deal with PHI, which makes
Mhm.
sense. You don't want
Mhm.
PHI to be put into like ChatGPT and then
Mhm.
that be trained. I also know that real world experience that like at least at my company, we did set up a steering committee which
Mhm.
oversees all of the Gen AI or AI activities and
Mhm.
everyone reports to them. And we also have like an entire governance setup where like anything that has AI attached to the product has to go through the governance and for it to be approved. But what I'm seeing right now is that every SaaS vendor is slapping Gen AI onto their product offering. So
Mhm.
at first it was only a couple of the big players, but
Mhm.
now every single vendor that we have like in our system has a Gen AI component which needs to go through our procurement again. It has to go through the governance. And so now we have this like huge backlog of the same vendors, but they have to go through this like governance setup. Are you seeing the same thing?
100%. I
Yeah.
will send you a cartoon I created after my 100th meeting from the last 4 months on this exact topic. And it basically shows a council forming their charter and selectively enabling 10 apps. And then it's the use of what's really going on by their employees. And it just says hopes and prayers. It's completely breaking, Tony, for the exact reason that you said. And I would go one step further. If you think AI is a tool, that is solely the responsibility of your IT team for approving rather than a teammate that is co-creating the future of every function you have. That's strategically the root cause of why you're not going to be able to stay ahead and get ahead in an area where AI is really transforming how we do work. So if I were to extrapolate that on a little bit more, for the last, let's say, 20 years of work, when SaaS has become mainstream, teams are organized around a mission. Every company has a mission. They organize marketing and sales and research and development and customer service and their foundation teams, legal, HR, finance, to fulfill that mission. And since we've had mass available cloud SaaS tools, teams go into tools and there is a beginning, middle, end to a workflow that the human is in charge of. Since we've had these breakthroughs in foundational LLM models that are now becoming breakthroughs across every SaaS app that every team uses, you really need to think of AI as part of your marketing team and part of your engineering team and part of insert name of team. So at Lanai, for example, we're a startup and we technically have about 15 people. I feel like I have 20 people because we're AI power users and we use it for almost everything. So I think what strategically and operationally, you need a mindset that is way more curious and open to the idea that your existing systems and structures will not help you figure out how to utilize AI if you don't think of it as a human in a human empowered type tool, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like an augmentation tool.
I think we should drink every time we say augmentation or productivity. I think it literally is a teammate that's operating without a performance management system. And this, I know we will talk product later. I'm just going to say Lanai has started to be able to see how do humans and AI interact wherever that's happening. How do you proactively secure your data from going to the places you don't want it to go? And then how do you really help human beings who are using AI every day do what is going to make your business more effective and efficient and steer away from the things that are going to make it less efficient? And I know we'll talk about that more, but effectively, that's what's missing in our kind of software tool set. And we're relying on a lot of human beings and a lot of processes and a lot of hopes and prayers, but there is no software solution for that right now.
Now, I do know that there's tremendous interest at the C-suite level at all companies, but I also recognize that most companies haven't implemented AI into production. So
Mhm.
I guess the question is, from your point of view, what's like the biggest factor that leads to a poor turnover rate for implementation?
Okay, let me try to say, I'll answer this first in that if you are a software company, we see this taking hold in software companies because the CEO can declare how AI will get implemented. So Michael Dell is betting on AI servers and he's saying we're going to invest in R&D to have a new product and we're going to reduce jobs in our sales and CX organization in order to fund that R&D. And oh, by the way, we're going to operate at a loss for a while, but we're betting on this industry moving in the AI direction in a way that will make it up on the back end. NVIDIA has done this, Microsoft has done this, Meta has done that. Their software products and their CEOs have made an edict, which is a strategic bet about tops down AI working for their product development strategy, and then balancing some of the investment in that coming mostly out of their volume functions that sell or service the product. Outside of software, it's very difficult for a CEO to make that kind of edict because their product is not solely a software product. It comes from human beings who are largely responsible for scaling and servicing that product. Take healthcare, for example. So I think the reason that you're seeing so many companies fail in moving from, hey, let's greenlight a lot of experiments to let's say we are now an AI forward company and we've adopted this across all our functions, not just our R&D functions, is because what we were talking about earlier, people are trying to manage this by committee. That's one reason. So they're really operating from let's standardize and reduce AI risk and control adoption. Okay, so there's a real control mindset. And that's not keeping pace with the fact that 60 to 80% of employees use AI every day, but it's out of the sanctioned use case.
You're talking
Not
about like shadow IT, where their
shadow
computer.
AI,
Yeah.
exactly. Shadow AI. And not because they're being nefarious, because they're trying to get their work done. So the council approach isn't working. The free for all also doesn't approach. Let's let every employee do whatever they want with AI. Then you get to things like Samsung and the forced errors of people putting PAI or PHI where it shouldn't exist. I think what we're seeing at Lanai with our customers that are making the most progress on sustained AI adoption, it's because they take this hybrid. They say your employees are the crowd, which Ethan Mollick popularized, who I like a lot for his academic work on AI adoption. Your employees are the crowd, and you want to create a lab of cross-functional owners who are helping to encourage AI experimentation, but scaling what works, which means they put the right level of software tools as well as human processes to make sure that they can see what people are doing with AI and prevent bad stuff from happening, not just report on it. So I know that was a lot, but I do think, to summarize, you're lucky if you can get a tops down edict that forces AI adoption. And you can usually only do that if you're a software product. But for the lion's share of companies, they're managing by council, and that doesn't work.
I'm also curious from your perspective, organizations, they do recognize the importance of AI, but they don't prioritize the investment opportunities. Like, why is that?
When you really get to the brass tacks of recognizing the importance versus having the skill and will to implement this at scale. In reality, the difference I see between companies that show the skill and will to implement it rather than talk about it, it actually is the CEO leading from the front and experimenting with AI themselves. Meaning one CEO who I think is going to be like, watch this space. I can't say their name, but that we're working with in healthcare. The CEO started using AI for board materials. And she said, I'm going to do one board meeting without asking for anybody to do anything, not my finance team, not my risk team. Like, you guys give me reports regularly. I get reports from various data sources. I'm going to create the board materials myself with the help of AI. And she reviewed it with her team beforehand, obviously, before going to the board to say, did I get anything wrong in the data or what have you? Humans were in the loop. But she drove what usually, if anybody runs corporate level board meetings, is at minimum a 4-week process and tons of overhead and back and forth. She drove it herself. And that was an aha to team. I want us to look for impact using AI wherever we can find it. And that enabled her to speak with authority and credibility, and then be able to really challenge her executives to try before they buy AI themselves. And I know it sounds crazy, Tony, but I could give you a bunch of McKinsey-like frameworks or what have you. I really think it comes down to people using AI 10 hours a week to start for personal and professional use cases so that they have the aha moment of, wow, this is capable of so much more than you otherwise would believe if you're asking a third party to explain to you what AI can do for your business.
I'm also curious from your point of view, like the whole upskilling your resources at a company. A lot of staff aren't upskilled with officially on how to use Gen AI tools. Can you explain like the training gap that's occurred?
My experience as an operator, when I left Gusto, we had 1,500 people, and it was hard enough then in a pre-Gen AI world to train people on everything they needed to be trained for. Gusto is an HR management system for small and medium businesses. And so we would have legal updates on payroll tax law. We would have product updates that we've just launched to this feature The reality is it is really hard to train a group of people that don't all sit in the same room every day doing the same thing every day, period, full stop. And now you say upskill on AI. What does that really mean? It's if you have AI working at scale, there's hundreds of workflow optimizations reshaping revenue and costs and risks. So in one company we work with, engineering cut debugging team in half. That accelerated $2 million of product launches. Product managers started to use it to analyze customer feedback. That saved 8 million in at-risk churn. Legal teams were using it for contract reviews. Finance was automating month-end close. It was happening everywhere. This becomes a little bit of a product commercial for Lanai. I don't mean it for that, but I just think you can't pre-facto train people on how to use AI. You need to really encourage an experimentation mindset with guardrails. And I think for right now, like again, we'll get to this, Lanai will provide some of those guardrails for you, but you want to scale actual good use cases because you know they're working. For example, if I pre-facto trained a particular sales team, this is a true story, on how to use AI, rather than, hey, we've chosen a couple AI tools, use them, just, hey, set up Lanai with the guardrails so PII doesn't go out and nothing breaks. We would not have found that there was one really killer AE who was also in charge of upsell, who had created a workflow optimization that improved his cross-sell slash upsell by 40% relative to everybody else. True story. And that was not trainable because it hadn't happened yet. So rather, the way Lanai does this is give you the visibility to see that's happening. And then you scratch and sniff more surgically. Okay, I see the sales team is really getting value out of this particular tool. Why? Why is that? And you start having better sales pipeline conversations, not again, pre-facto manufactured, but every week. And you start to say, okay, Johnny just did this amazing workflow optimization. Is there a reason why everybody can't do it? No? Okay, let's train everybody to do it. And more importantly, let's not have a third party that doesn't sell every day do the training. Let's have Johnny train people on exactly what he did to optimize his workflow to get that. So I think it's fundamentally a shift in that upskilling is an always on activity and a core competency that needs to be deepened in this AI world. Arguably it had to be before, but now it definitely has to be.
So this is my 2 cents, but I've met a lot of people who have like the go-getter mentality, and typically those people are the ones that are using like emergent tech to get ahead on sales or performance or whatever. So to me, it's hard to train that go-getter mentality to like, because it's such a soft skill that like I don't think you can train it.
No, I don't think you, yes, and yes, as I'm saying this story, if you lead an enterprise company, we can all know the Johnnies and the Sallys across the organization who are those go-getters, who are going to find, they are your crowd. They are going to find your AI use cases that make them better at their job, that drive performance for your company. 100%. And I can't pre-facto tell everybody else on their teams to do that because that is baked within who they are as humans. What I'm saying as a function of future learning and development that AI helps with is it helps give us effectively a cookie trail of how Johnny and Sally at a task level are doing that thing. So it's no longer, I don't know how they're doing it. They're just doing it. Now it's okay. Johnny worked with Agentforce plus SalesLoft plus a new AI sales tool, and we saw these results, 40% increase in cross-sell. Now let's deconstruct at a task level what that best practice was. And with Lanai, you could see stories like that and we would proselytize them or promulgate them out of context first by here's your best practices in sales that would enable the team to then just you training doesn't work well, incentives do. So if I now know, as I was a head of sales, that the art of the possible is now 40% higher than what I had been goaling people on before, whether they go by desire or they go by this is what's necessary to stay in the sales team. We know this is possible, so now do it. The combination of carrot, stick, show and tell is the combination of L&D that will really work in the modern era.
So like right now, like what shift is like occurring in the enterprise AI market when that's like moving focus from like individual tools to like bigger comprehensive platforms?
I think that it's right now, the shift is the pain. The shift is, hey, this approach, the council, the charter, the L&D sessions, the office hours, if I just were to extrapolate, write a case on the hundreds of companies I've talked to, they're in their second inning of AI, which starts with their, okay, we've been 6 months in experimentation, maybe a year in experimentation. And we, with the charter that we wrote and the goals that we wrote, we gave budget to each department head. And we said, go experiment and come back to us with what the results are. But now, if you're an enterprise leader, and I'm just like imagining people laughing at this because it happens so much, you're in that God-forsaken stop, start, continue meeting, and you're sitting there, okay, we've been experimenting for 6 months. What do we stop? What do we start? What do we continue? Where are we putting our next dollar? And when will we see the return on investment? And that is the pain. Nobody really has an answer to that. So you have usually the CIO, the chief data and analytics officer, or the chief digital officer at a company that is anywhere outside of software. Maybe it's your chief technical officer if you're a software company, who's in charge with balancing all the different C-level members' competing desires, needs, and hopes for AI, which effectively boil down to you have a group of people that want to accelerate innovation, and you have a group of people who may want to do that, but their job is to mitigate risks. Their job is to mitigate risks. So where we are in the enterprise adoption strategy of AI is how the F are we doing that? And that enters where we, Lanai, feel like there's a real need in the market. But if I were to explain that need absent explaining what Lanai does, it's where does observability plus security plus governance come together when humans are interacting with AI increasingly, ubiquitously, and heterogeneously. And that's what's missing. We buy observability software, we buy security software, we might buy governance software, and then over here we might buy some like workforce transformation, L&D software. But all of that breaks when you're really trying to drive adoption that improves your P&L at scale.
I'd say like another big thing that I've noticed is that for companies who are like investing in AI, they typically come from like your traditional like waterfall software development where like you go from A to B and then you're done. There's no iteration, there's no continuous improvement. You just build it and then you put it into prod and you don't touch it ever again. For someone who's been in AI for a long time, that's not the case. Like you have to like continuously improve the algorithm when you put it out to production. So there's like a big mismatch I find when older giant companies invest into AI is that again they have the old methodologies of like their old waterfall techniques and now they have to switch over to agile or scrum or something like that and be more like incremental whenever they build it. And so that's a lot of change management that needs to happen on top of implementing new like emergent tech. Are you guys seeing that as well with your clients?
That example in particularly is about product or R&D teams putting it in the company's product. And yes, I see that approach, that waterfall approach, which again, I just take as a kind of tops down old world approach. It definitely, again, I would argue it probably hasn't been working for you, but it may have had a better, longer illusion that it was working for you in a pre-Gen AI world. I think it certainly doesn't, the premise of the question doesn't speak to the fact that every single team, including but not limited to your R&D team, is using AI today. And if you don't track that, you can't secure it, and you certainly can't drive productivity without that. And so I think it's about, if you understand what agile development is, which I just feel is managing use intelligently and in a modern way, if you overcomplicate this or you try to pre-facto determine it by council, committee, or tops-down waterfalling, you really will not be able to get the benefit of this particular phase of enterprise growth and technology development that we're in, which is there is nickels and dimes everywhere. There's nickels and dimes everywhere. Like your legal team getting really good, safe power users of AI, that could really improve not just your efficiency and effectiveness, it can improve what it's like to be an in-house counsel, because you're taking away the work that kind of stinks and allowing your lawyers to think creatively and strategically about what should this contract really say? What should this relationship with this customer really be? And if you're doing this well in customer service, you're allowing your CX teams to experiment with AI so that they can automate 90% of the stuff that's dragging them down, not theoretically, but actually, and then use that time to more freely speak to a customer like a human being and have a conversation about what is their pain and how can we provide a solution for that. So I'm reacting with passion about this, Tony, because I feel like it is a little highfalutin to say democratize AI. I just feel so strongly that human beings and companies, the humans who work there, the humans who are served by the companies, will be so much better off if there is an effort to get in front of a wave that is upon us, which is how do you turn everybody into a safe power AI user?
Can you tell me a little bit more about your enterprise AI platform that you guys got cooking over there? It looks cool.
So Lanai, myself, and my co-founder, Steve Herod, who was the CTO of VMware and invested a lot in the cloud observability space, have come together, and our team is people who've been in enterprise, and we're effectively building, think, ways for enterprise AI. We tell you where the traffic is. Every human being interacting with AI, we discover it, we surface it. So you know where the traffic patterns are, which right now doesn't exist in the market as best as we can tell. We use our own model to describe the use case to you and to label the risk according to your particular security needs, in addition to some of the basic ones that everybody has. And then over time, this isn't developed yet, but we will provide both in context and out of context highlights as to best practices of exactly the type of stuff we're saying. If there's someone finding productivity in a safe way in any department, we will help you as a C-suite discover it, but more importantly, every level of your organization understand that is a cool use case and get people psyched about adopting that in their own workflow.
And then for the viewers at home who are interested in learning more about this, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, go to www.withlanai.com and you can sign up for a demo. Right now, we have a waiting list, but we work with big businesses and are partnering with them to test, tune, and iterate on some of what I've said. So that's the best way, or hit me up on LinkedIn, Lexi Reese.
And then with the whole invention of generative AI, how does that affect like enterprise AI moving forward in the future?
And that's most of what we've been talking about. But I feel, what does every company want to do? They want to get, teach, and grow relationships with customers that are durably profitable over time. And to do that, they need a fantastic, talented employee base. And if you think about Gen AI, it's an accelerator to help you create pathways to and through your product, or if you're a customer, or to and through your company if you're an employee. And there are things that you can do to enable the acquisition of customers and talent to be more effective and efficient, again, for all parties, to get people in the door, whether customer or talent. When they're in the door, your ability to serve these populations of people, your ability to really segment the experiences of your customers and your employees and personalize how you treat them so that you're effectively creating raving fans in your customers and your employees who you want to stay there. And despite the zeitgeist, there are still more people or more jobs than there are people to fill them in many industries. And when you have the right tool set, of which we hope Lanai will be a part, you will be able to effectively see, secure, and scale the good things that are happening at every stage of that funnel, which is effectively a bow tie funnel of acquisition and loyalty for customers and for employees. And with a navigation system like Lanai, you'll be able to see how AI is helping you impact your yield at every stage. So ultimately, and this is why I say drink if you say productivity, everything has to, in a capitalist economy, has to either increase revenue or decrease cost, but over time hit your profits positively. And you're going to need a new way or a new tool entirely that combines observability and security and accelerated learning and development. And that's what Lanai provides.
Very cool. Thanks so much for being on the show. And until next time, stay curious.